Yo, welcome back to another tutorial, guys, and we'll get straight over and show you guys the photo we'll be working with. So if we come down, we'll be working with this one right here. So as you can see, a little bit of a fade to those really bright areas. So we're going to do a little bit of a roll off to those whites and highlights. The blacks and shadows need a bit of a fade, and then we just need to add quite a bit of vibrance to the image and up those shadows, maybe a few whites to keep it nice and bright. I've got the settings for this shot, so 50mm and then f4, so really nice and sharp, not too worried about a lot of depth of field, trying to get a nice sharp image. And then a fast shutter speed of 1/1600 because it's a very bright day, and then a low ISO because it's a very bright day, also of 100. So if we come up, you guys can go give her a follow down in the description. I'll put all the links down there. Also, she actually offers a lot of resources for aspiring influencers, bloggers. So if you come over to her website here, you can see, if you come up here, influencer resources, and she sort of just tells her story and documents her journey, and then posts her advice and everything she can do to help you guys do what she is doing. So come over here if you guys are interested in that sort of stuff. She also shops her presets here, and I'll be linking these down in the description for you guys. So if you come over here, you guys can come and see some before and afters and decide if they're for you, if you like them, if you like the style. And yeah, if we go back to her Instagram, let's try to create something like this shot right here. Let's get into it. Let's really bring up the exposure, and then I'm gonna really drop the contrast. And I'm doing this because I want to show you guys the curves, and usually the curves will be done in a preset and I wouldn't worry about them, especially the red, green and blues. I would probably definitely change this one, but the red, green and blue channels, I'd probably just leave them as whatever the preset put them at, and then tweak everything else, unless I'm trying to come up with a new style or really change some colors. So I'm gonna do these, and then I'll explain why I moved them. Okay, so that's the curves finished, and I'll just quickly do some exposures up here. Let's contrast. So just really quickly do these. Bring the highlights down. Okay, so I did the curves, and what you want to think of is this one is for the fade in the highlights, and the whites up there, the blacks, the shadows, and the white highlights there. This is for the fade, and this one is for the contrast. And then I just did a really simple S-curve for this one, especially because we have a bit of a vibrant look to our image. So what I did is just bring down the shadows. I moved the midpoint just above the middle of the midtones, and then that will naturally just put a bit more into the highlights. Came and I did it to each one, just roughly line them up so they all did the same. So if I get rid of this, so turn the curves on and off, you can see there's not much of a color shift. It's pretty much the same colors, but just more contrast. And then that's just gonna really help our colors pop. And yeah, so you just match them up. If you've done something wrong, it will look like that. So you got this yucky blue throughout the image, and that's when you haven't matched them up correctly. And it's pretty easy. You just keep tweaking them until you get it right. And then if I just go back, if we go back to red, green, and blue, we've got our curves back here. So And this one is for the fade. So this little bit to the whites up here, it's pretty subtle in this image. You don't see it much. And then you got to bring up the black point here that adds that little bit of fade in the darker areas. And just anchoring the midpoints, keeping the shadows down for a bit of contrast there. And yeah, this one controls the fade, and it's different to shifting the shadows up here, for example. So I think of shifting the shadows up here as revealing detail. So now I can see detail in those dark areas, and down here I think contrast, like it adds a fade and it will remove how harsh those areas are. So remember, it's different. Adding shadows, taking shadows away up there is different to shadows down here. This is for fade. That's what I think of it as. So if we come back up here, I might just reset these and then I'll be able to explain why I shift them the way I did. So after the curves had been done, I just wanted to bring up these shadows. We need a real vibrant look. So bringing them up almost all the time. If you're after a real vibrant look, you really bring up the shadows. And then we just look a little too harsh in the highlights. I very often bring highlights down. I see this over and over in the edits I do, is bringing highlights down. So that's something I do quite a bit. And then we still look a little bright in those whites, bring them down a bit, and then we start to get a really similar exposure. Contrast can maybe come back up a bit. Okay, I think we're doing pretty well. I know I have to mess around with the luminance. It's gonna make my image a little brighter as well. If I up the luminance of some of these colors, let's say, I'll just do it real quick, like the yellows, we need to do that, and the greens. Okay, so let's go over to this portion of the image. Texture, drop just a tiny bit maybe. Clarity, I'm gonna bring up. We've got a bit of a crispy look. And that kind of affects your contrast as well. Dehaze, maybe a bit. And it kind of brings out the detail in the back there. Not sure exactly what dehaze does. It sort of leaves the blacks and whites alone, and it's like you're shifting the highlights and shadows a bit. And this is a very vibrant looking image. It's nice and bright. We want those brighter colors to have a bit more saturation, so I'm going to bring up the vibrance there and bring down saturation. And up here you can see our blacks are quite harsh, so let's bring them up a lot. I'm actually going to bring them up a lot. Let's go about there. And then you've got to balance it out with, is it the shadows, is it the blacks that need bringing up? So I'm looking just at the darkest of darkest areas is the blacks. And I'm looking how much detail is in those blacks. So can I see those little bits of grass in hers? Can I see it in mine? No, I can't. I'm gonna adjust it to match it up like with that. And then how quick those shadows roll off into highlights. So, and that's what I'm looking at for shadows. Right. Let's keep going. Now we've got a nice bright image. We can try to match some colors up now. So we've done our exposure. Let's come down to split toning. We'll start with split toning. So I want to add some warmth into the highlights because she always goes for a nice, vibrant, warm look. So it's maybe best if we do this to the highlights. Lots of warmth in there. And then I'm gonna balance that with some cool shadows. And I'm thinking putting warmth in the highlights because if we go back to our original image, this flower here is very white, especially if we bring up the exposure. I can't now because we're just doing the before and after, but I think it's very white. So if we come back down, it's very white in our image, and I think over in hers is yellow. So I think because this is naturally white and over in hers it's yellow, she has added in some warmth into the highlights, if not the whole image. So that's why I'm going with some warmth. And then I'm gonna add in some blues as we're sort of looking really warm. I just want to keep the shadows kind of nice and cool. I don't see heaps of warmth in the darker areas, so I want to keep them cool-ish. And then I might shift. So if my shadows start to look too cool, what I'll do is shift a bit of warmth into them. So now more warm tones are going into the shadows if I shift it this way. Instead of 50-50, I want a bit more warmth throughout the entire image. Okay, I think we're looking good. Right, what about, let's come back down. Let's maybe do some saturation. So we're a bit too saturated in a lot of colors. So let's just quickly bring them down before we start working with our hues. So you can see our greens are way too saturated. They go like this real blue when they get real desaturated. So we're gonna bring them down. Yellows, we need these yellows to really pop. Are they yellows or are they oranges? You've got to play around to see. So you can see the oranges are the skin tones. Sometimes yellow affects skin tone, but we know that these colors are yellows because you can see that they're completely gone and they're not oranges. So now we know to match them up with this. And then sometimes they'll affect the same area, which can be quite tricky. Right, our oranges aren't too bad there. And then our reds, so that's the dress. I can see a bit more saturation in that. And okay, our sky. We have no sky at the moment. Let's really bring up the blues, and I think that gets the look we want. So let's really bring it up. Starting to look pretty good there. And since we're messing with JPEG, you can do this with raw images as well. We want to bring up the denoise. So this will just really smooth out the image. And if you're working with iPhone photos or any low quality photo, really consider playing around with denoise. It will just really smooth it out and get rid of that digital look. So definitely do that, and it really smooths it out. So here's before and after. I know I can really notice it, but maybe through YouTube can't really notice it. While we're here, we'll just chuck up the sharpening. So I think she goes for a very crispy look to her photos. Let's bring that up. And I just sort of look at how busy it gets down there when I bring it up. You can sort of just pick the smoothness of the image. So I'm going to bring it up quite a bit. And one hard thing with sharpening, when you export your image, it actually comes out a lot smoother. So you got to pay attention to that. Like it will come out, it will look over sharpened in Lightroom here, but once I export it and then make it the same size, it sort of really smooths it out, and you can probably do a bit more sharpening in Lightroom. Okay, so we're probably onto hues, and we just gotta match up the brightness of some of these colors. So let's come down here. So the reds were affecting the dress, and I reckon she's dropped it, because even if you just take her arm, for example, it's much deeper over in hers, and then her dress also looks more deeper and desaturated. So I mean deeper, not desaturated. So I'm going to drop that a lot, and oranges, rich orange tones, I'm going to drop them a bit so she gets those really nice skin tones. Luminance of the greens, let's brighten them a bit. Aquas, so aquas are way back there, not much of them at all. Hue, so maybe the most important part. Let's try to match up these colors. So our yellows need to be a bit more orange. You can see we just don't have that orange punch in them. Let's shift them across. And then let's, okay, our greens, we want more of a bluey green, so let's shift them this way. You can see what that does. Makes a lot of our yellows and green affect a lot of the same area, so you got to balance them out, something like that. And then skin tones, we're pretty close. I'd maybe put a bit more yellow into the skin tone. So let's go this way a touch. As for the reds, especially if you look down here, I think we could go a touch more yellow or orange. Right. So let's do some blues. I think we need a lighter blue or a teal, so moving this towards a lighter blue. And as you can see, aquas don't have much to do with this image at all. They're sort of way back there, creating some pretty ugly colors, so we'll probably just desaturate them a bit. Okay, blues. Just a bit more teal back there. Purples, so just flick it back and forth to see where it's affecting. It's very lightly affecting the sky, and I think I'm going to shift it all the way to the left, because that creates a bit more of a teal. And there's this one part about this image I don't know how to get, and it's the purple water in the background. I think she has just painted over it to get a bit more color into the image, but you would think maybe the purple slider would affect it. It looks like there's no color back there, that's why I think she's brushed it in, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to shift the purple all the way this way to get a little more blue into that sky, as I think it's hard, a little tricky to match up the colors of the sky, but that's how I would do it. Aqua's not much there, maybe a tiny bit of a purplish tinge, and saturation, take a bit out. Aqua's way back there. I just drop them a tiny bit. The blues, might want to play around with the blues a bit. You can bring back a lot of detail there. I think we look alright at 0. Okay. Okay, so I think we're looking pretty good. I'm gonna move on to some brushes now. So I've already placed some brushes. I'll just show you where they're affecting. So this is affecting pretty much the entire dress. And what I want to do is just add a little bit of contrast to make our subject pop a little. It looks like she's almost either added in contrast or darkened the entire left side. So I'm just going to bring up contrast, and that's just going to make our subject stand out a bit more, especially being in the middle of the image. And then maybe drop exposure. Okay, looks good. And then there's another bit down here. I think this path she has brushed to get some more colors into the image, and because there's just no colors in that image, so if we like really brought up saturation, you struggle to get any colors out of that area. So I reckon she has brushed it in. So that's what we're gonna do. I've placed one down here. If I show you where it's affecting, it's just affecting down there. And what I want to do is just bring up the temperature, so that should add in a nice orange. And then I'll just put in some contrast as well. Darken it a bit, richer tones. And now just one more brush, so got one place, and this is just going to be affecting her face there, and we just want a little more contrast. And what I'll do is, this is what I quite often do, is drop the blacks, because that's gonna give the appearance more contrast. It's gonna make the eyebrows, it's gonna make the nose, it's gonna create all the edges to stand out a bit more. And then maybe some clarity to really make it pop and nice and sharp. And yeah, I think that could be about it, guys. Sharpening, I could drop it a lot. This is kind of soft because it's a screenshot, so maybe ours looks too crispy, but I think I'll just leave sharpening there. Maybe if we drop clarity, but it's definitely got some clarity in there, don't worry about that. I'll just leave it there, guys. Comment down below who you guys want to see, because then I'll go reach out to them on Instagram. They can send in a photo and I'll do a tutorial on them. And yeah, go check out all her content, guys. All that stuff I mentioned at the start can really help you guys if you're trying to become a blogger or an Instagrammer or a travel vlogger. And yeah, check out all my stuff down in the description, guys. And if you're into video Luts, I don't really post that stuff over here, but I do have it over on my website. So if you like my photo editing, you might like my video editing, so you can go check it out over on my website. I'm trying to keep this YouTube photo based. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Comment down below and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.